Today, I'm going to introduce Devin Ehrig, who is a seasoned executive with experience in international finance and financial law. He's also an entrepreneur. Welcome, Devin.
Thank you, Julia. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So your first connection with China was back in 2005.
Oh, earlier than that.
Earlier than that? I thought that when you were exchange student.
I actually came before in 2003, and then I went back as an exchange student in 2005.
Okay.
In mainland China, I just studied exchange for a year, and in Hong Kong, I got a master's degree, a JD. And I think it is quite different, actually, even between mainland China and Hong Kong as far as education is concerned. Right. So. For me, I enjoy education, but I also really enjoy new concepts and new ideas.
Okay, cool. Yeah. 你好.
Oh, 你好.
Good. So, what's your response to have you eaten yet when you first time heard that instead of how are you as a form of greeting in China?
Well, I was pretty hungry, so I said no. That caused a lot of confusion. But
okay, so
as you know, eventually you learn culturally that there's different ways to say hello.
That's funny. I know you can speak Mandarin. Do you want to practice tongue twister?
What were you thinking?
吃葡萄不吐葡萄皮儿，不吃葡萄倒吐葡萄皮儿。
吃葡萄不吃葡萄皮，然后我忘记了。You know?
不吃葡萄倒吐葡萄皮儿。
不吃葡萄倒吐葡萄皮。
Good. Do you have a tongue twister to test on me?
Well, I'll say it slowly,
okay,
and then why don't you try to go faster? She sells seashells by the seashore.
She sells seashells by seashore.
Very good. So you're better than me at this. You're obviously a very experienced show host.
Thank you. Then your Chinese affection evolved from studying and receiving a Juris Doctor degree in the Chinese University of Hong Kong to work and study your own business in China. So what's one part of the Chinese culture that you were excited to experience?
One cultural part of China that's very exciting is the way that people become friends and express themselves as friends. It's a little bit different than the American way.
So making friends is different from here?
A little bit different, yeah.
Can you explain more?
It's a little difficult to explain, but...
I know from my perspective, I just want to hear from your perspective.
When the world feels stuck at home, there are people who would love nothing more than to have a home. Together, we continue to give help and hope to those in need.
For a Western person's perspective in China, to actually make a friend, especially between two men, because my experience, a lot of my friends were men in China, and we would hang out and do things. You really finding a situation where you can be comfortable being a foreign person and a Chinese person, where there's no other context, right? You're just sitting down with a friend.
Right.
Was a little challenging, and it took me many years, but one of my best friends in the world is from Taiwan and was also living and working in China. And that experience of us, he doesn't speak a word of English, so the two of us have this great friendship, and it's always been in a Chinese cultural context. And so that process of getting to know him, of building trust with each other, and also like joining in the group, being with all the other friends in the group and getting to know each other was just a lot more, it was a lot more personal than in some ways than finding friends and building out friendships than I've had in the US. Maybe just because I was out of my own culture. So I had to be more conscious of myself and what I was doing as it was happening.
After you make a lot of friends over there, you feel very excited.
Of course. I mean, that's one of the things, the stereotypes of people that come from all over East Asia, China included, are almost too formal. In China, people immediately in the U.S. think, oh, like kung fu, or nowadays they think, oh, rich, just buying Louis Vuitton everywhere or something. And Chinese people are so much more than that. They're people like everybody else. And so when you get to do away with all that and just have friends, it becomes very, very wonderful.
You are writing a book. Would you like to share some of the story, or one of the stories from your book? Is called Wild West of Asia.
Right. It's a personal project of mine. Living many years, both in China as well as all across Asia. From 2003 until really the Beijing Olympics kind of bookended a long period of change in China and for the rest of Asia. And having been a person fortunate enough to live through that, I wanted to write down some of my experiences and share them. I'm not the only one. Many people moved from the West to Asia during that time, but we all have our stories and we all have the things that we sit down and share with each other. And I thought, you know what, it's time now to at least put that down in record. I have a lot of different stories. Would you thinking more of a kind of a funny one, or more of one that's
share with us, please.
Sure. So one of the very funny ones that was quite interesting. I actually my family background is Jewish here in Los Angeles, and what many Americans nowadays, some people may be more aware of it, but a few years ago nobody was aware. Is that of all the ethnic minorities in China, Jewish people, there's actually native Chinese Jewish people, which is quite surprising for many people here. Right. So one time when I was studying, I was able to take about 2 months of my summer and travel throughout the country to go to some of the old cities where these Jewish people lived and to go find them and to go talk to them.
Okay, where did you find them?
Well, they're mainly based in Kaifeng, in Henan province, so outside of Luoyang. And that's because Kaifeng was the capital of the Southern Song Dynasty, and also the end of the Silk Road Trail. And so that is where the Jewish people had migrated along to go live. So we had a little bit of an adventure being dropped off. If you remember, in China, you used to take the sleeper buses overnight. If you went between the city, they had the buses that you could lay down on and sleep.
Yes.
Now with the trains, you don't need it anymore. But,
right.
But what they didn't tell you was if you bought the bus ticket, if the city was a little bit away from where the highway was, they wouldn't drive into the city to drop you off. You'd be dropped off on the side of the highway, and you'd just have to figure your way. And that time in Henan province, there weren't very many foreign people. And so at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, it's pitch black. You can see the city kind of off in the distance glowing. My Australian friend and I got dropped off, and there was a line of 5, heipaicha, the old illegal taxi drivers. And they saw 2, foreign people get off of a bus in the middle of the night, and they just broke down laughing and looked at us because they'd never seen any. They had never expected that out of a Chinese-style sleeping long-distance bus, 2 foreigners would show up like that. So. A lot of adventures in that area.
I believe there's a lot of fun things in your book. We look forward to reading it.
Yeah, no, I hope everybody can enjoy.
So what's the highest and best use of your time, considering all of your experience and education?
Well, for me, I mean, the best use of the time is really every day I try to organize what I want to accomplish in that day and what I'm building towards, and I spend my time that way. I mentor a lot of startups in Asia and also here in the US, and I work with people building technology companies that go across border. And that's one of the areas that we always explore is, if you're a business founder, if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to grow your business and you really want to make it big, what do you spend your time doing each day? And what I found was the more senior that I got and the more leadership roles I undertook, the more that I had to concentrate and think about people and what they were doing to form a team rather than just what I was doing on my own. And that could be outside, that could be putting partners together to build something, or that could be inside in finding managers and employees and contractors and people that would come internally and work together. If you couldn't bring the people together, nothing would ever be accomplished. So a lot of my time gradually shifted from thinking about myself to thinking about, well, how do we do this thing? How do we build a team around something?
What else would you like to share with us as an international businessman?
One of the lessons I learned from a mentor of mine based in Asia was always that you can't make the assumption that culture is everything. All right, culture
That's a
has
good
its
point.
place, but people are people, agreements are agreements, countries are countries. And one of the reasons I chose the title Asia's Wild West from my book was that we have this image of the Wild West in the US as a lawless time, and it wasn't lawless at all. There were Native American tribes that had their laws and their rules for working with each other, and
Right.
Western people who came out to the West had their rules and laws, whether they obeyed them, whether or not the local authorities were corrupt and were done, that's a different question. But there were rules and there were structures in the way things happen, and it's the same in Asia. Oftentimes, as a Westerner, you'll show up in Asia, and the assumption, all your normal intuitions about business kind of get thrown out the window as you're absorbed by this wonderful new cultural experience. That has its place in time, but when you're there and you're building something, you need to look at it from that perspective as well, and treat people the way you'd like to be treated, but you also remember that people are people and everyone has their own goals, and how do we ensure that we're all working towards the same goal as a way to build something.
That really makes sense. Thank you so much, Devin, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.